here. This is an amazing event, I have to say. It's great to just have so much proactivity in the room, isn't it? So many expertise. It's brilliant. So I work as a landscape designer in the company that I set up with my husband, Stephen Tierney. And so I only do landscape design now, but I suppose coming from, I did architecture first and then horticulture, so I suppose that connection with architecture and how housing meets the landscape around it has always been something of a particular interest of mine. So this is the kind of thing that I try and do a lot of, is kind of rainfall saving and helping my clients to maximize, I suppose, the rainfall runoff that they might have in their projects. So I suppose the first thing really is, you know, why do we need to save rainfall? We all know the answers to that, really. You know, there's more engineered-based solutions in building projects, and then there's more nature-based solutions, and the nature-based ones are the ones that now, thankfully, the county councils are pushing more as well, because they're so beneficial to everybody and to the environment as well. So environmental, it obviously reduces, if we save rainfall runoff, it reduces pressure on storm drains, it reduces incidents of flooding and erosion and pollution. For homeowners, it's great for, obviously, can be very aesthetic if we save water and if we create little rain gardens. And then obviously we know that for wildlife, water is essential to life. And then who can do all these? Who can save rainfall? Basically anybody. I don't know if anybody knows this lady, Wendy Allen. Do you know her? She's a really, she's UK based. She does these really nice small scale little rainfall saving projects, and she does a lot of stuff with schools, and they're just great fun, and they're really worth having a look at. She does all these really cool, I suppose she celebrates the path of rainfall as it falls, and how it then gets guided then down into the wider garden. And then obviously, you know, from my perspective as a designer, we have the kind of more small scale, how do we save rainfall in a domestic setting, and then how do we maybe look at that in a larger setting as well. So yes, I was lucky enough to work with the biodiversity team in Fingal on creating the Coming Home to Nature garden last year in Bloom. And it was basically about, I'll talk more about it later, but it was about, I suppose, trying to retrofit SUDS features into housing estates. Now, so I'll talk about this first. So these are great resources. There's so many things online. Obviously, Fingal have a fantastic householder's guide. The All Ireland Pollinator Plan that I know has come up again and again, but they've got a really nifty little guide now how to make rainwater planters, which is really, really good and really simple to follow. The RSPB, they've got a really extensive document on sustainable urban drainage systems. And I have to say, I find the RHS really good as well, the Royal Horticultural Society. They've got really fantastic resources on how to do a lot of these things, just from a very kind of practical point of view, where you should site things, how you should do them, and things to watch out for. So that's really worth looking at as well. Oh, no, okay. Whoops, how do I go back? Never mind, don't worry, it's okay. Thank you very much. So SUDS is a word, is a term that we heard, and I'm sure most people here know what SUDS is. So Sustainable Urban Drainage Systems, and it's basically an umbrella name for basically saving rainfall, and that can encompass kind of more engineer-led methods, which are things that kind of go, things or products or things that you buy off the shelf that can go in or under the ground, that are methods for saving water and or for slowing it down. And then there's the nature-based ones as well that we'll talk through now. But SUDS is effectively, it helped me, I suppose, to visualize it as a kind of a train or a path or a journey. So If we say take rainfall and it's coming out of the sky and it's going straight into the storm drain, then obviously that's not much of a journey or a path. But whatever we can put along that way is a way to basically save the water and then to basically slow it down. Slowing it down and trying to allow it to reabsorb into the groundwater, into the soil, is what we're really aiming to achieve here. Because obviously we all know, we get these sudden rainfall events that is going down onto very, very dry soil, and it's moving at such a rate that the actual absorption rates are very minimal. So, we know if you water your vegetable garden in the summer and you put a great big thing of water on top and then you scratch down into the soil and we just, it might only be a centimetre deep. So it's a way of slowing down basically, or finding opportunities to slow down the rainfall to allow it then to infiltrate back down into the soil and to basically recharge the groundwater, which is what we're aiming to achieve. So we've got various different methods of doing that along that path, along that journey. And even if we just do one of them, it's better than just hooking it straight up to the storm drains. So, you can kind of be as involved or make it as intricate or as you maybe want to. But so this was a garden that I designed for citron in 2023 for Borbier Bloom. Hope everybody's been to Bloom. It's brilliant. It's a great event, as you know. And anyway, this was designed as a front garden. So it was a house that was in a sort of an urban or a suburban situation. And it was supposed to be kind of where it was near busy roads. And it was, I suppose, a kind of trying to shoehorn in as many ways that we possibly could to save water and to improve a space or a garden for wildlife and for people and for passers-by, and to make it something that was basically adding to the community, allowing for more contact and communication with people walking by. And so that's why we had a seating area in the front as well. So it was trying to do a lot of things. It was a bit like a Swiss Army knife where it had lots of different tools in a very small space. But in terms of Citron were bringing out this tiny little funny little thing, to be honest.
Made of plastic.
Yeah, it was kind of cute, but yeah. So this diagram, I suppose, explains it quite well in terms of what I was trying to achieve in terms of the suds train. So if we start at number 1, is the roof. So it was a green roof. We ended up doing a sedum roof. Number 2, we had water misters that were plugged into the mains. They can't be plugged in actually into a water butt because you get listeria. But that was a way of trying to mitigate the effects of air pollution. Number 3 was, then we started really in earnest with the suds features. So the water came down on the sedum roof and it was absorbed by the plants there. Any runoff then went down into the gutters, down into the downpipes, and then it was saved in various different ways. But we had these big water butts, but they were open, so they were high enough for kids not to fall into them. But they were open and we planted into the top of them. But they were effectively ponds, they were lined and they had water in them. And then you can have great fun with kind of rills or moving the water around. So conveyance system is part of a suds strategy that basically just means you're moving water from one place to another. So the great thing about these water containers, and we'll come up now with the next project in Fingal, we did rainwater planters, is that they can be very close to the house, whereas some of the other features have to be way away. And so they were basically collected, and then they went down this series of rills. Now again, they had drops, the rills, so that you were creating the sound of water. So it was again trying to kind of create this white noise, really, with the idea that there was traffic around. And then they ended up in this was a big rain garden. And then we also had this doesn't show any other plants, by the way. This just shows the hard landscaping features. And number 6 here was a pond. So this was just it on plan. You might be able to see it a bit clearer there. And then just these were some of the things that we picked out from it. So there was the green roof here, and then we had a rain chain. I'm not sure they're very good, really, to be honest. We have one on our house, and just the rain just seems to go around it more than anything else. But anyway, we had it. As I say, I was trying to shoehorn in as many suds features as possible. So we had a green roof, rain chain. Then these were the rainwater. Actually, sorry, this was not a planter. That shouldn't say planter. These were like ponds. So they were open bodies of water. And we had irises and other plants planted into them. And then the overflow from those. So it's always the overflow from one, then goes into the next, then goes into the next. So at each of these points, you're finding opportunities for the water to be slowed down, basically, and managed and kept. And obviously, if you store it in a water butt or something like these open containers, then you could then take a tap and use it elsewhere in your vegetable garden. So that shows those containers. Then that just shows the rill. They were really nice, actually. They worked well. And then this is a view from the top looking down. So you could just see the corner there of the sedum roof. And then we just had a little kind of area there for sitting out, which was all sorts of found materials that we put together, a bit like a magpie nest of found materials. And then you can just see the pond there, just in the top. And then because we brought in all this water, then there was an opportunity then to have to provide habitats or create habitats then for insects, because the insects obviously need water, so you can't really have one without the other. And then there's the reclaimed materials sort of patio that we had there as well. Should have started with that, sorry. So this is actually an illustration from one of the documents that I showed you earlier. So this just shows really suds operating on much more of an urban scale. And there's real experts in this field. I'm certainly not an expert, but I just enjoy it, and I think it's something that we can all implement in our whatever green space we have access to. But this is a really cool little diagram about how we can manage water, basically, because obviously we have a housing crisis. We're building over more of areas that were previously permeable. Now they're becoming impermeable with roofs. And so this isn't a problem that's going away. We have to kind of find ways of including these into everything that we do. So this just shows some of the ways that you might implement it on a wider scale. Now the garden that we did year before, so this was again a bloom garden, and it was the precursor to a project that hopefully Haines is going to talk about a bit later on, about makeovers or trying to implement suds features more into existing places. But this was supposedly like a housing estate, so there was two little houses here, and it was like there'd been a localized earthquake, so one is kind of up out of the ground and the other's lower. So it's great, visitors were able to walk through and experience, I suppose, what these different spaces, you were effectively walking through different suds features, and you got to experience what they felt like as you walked through them. And then the front part here, because it was kind of up out of the ground, we were able to put glass fronts on each of the sections of these suds features, so that you could look basically under the ground and see what was underneath them. And that really came from when we were doing the citron garden the year before. We would have a lot of conversations with visitors who were excited to see it, but you'd say, oh, this is a rain garden, and they would not really know how that was different from anything else, because really a rain garden is just it's a depression or a shallow in a low part of your site away from a building, and it's unlined, so it can access the soil underneath it, and it has a range of different grades of aggregates, and then you'd have a material layer, and then soil, and then it's planted up with plants that can sustain periods of waterlogging and drought. But really, if you're just looking at it from the top, you can't see any of that. So it's hard to really see why that makes it any different. So this gave us basically an opportunity to look underneath the ground in all of these different suds features, which I'll show you some pictures of. Now, in reality, how much aggregate and what mix you use is very much a specialist sort of thing because it really depends on what your soil is like. It depends on where the water table is. It depends on your, the bedrock. It depends on lots of different things. So that's why in building projects you would always start by doing trial pits to see how quickly the water runs through into the soil. So this was a model, and it was a snapshot of a particular circumstance that where you might use various different methods for discharging down into the ground. So this is just an illustration of how it looked from above. Do I have? No. Okay. So again, we had a bike shelter as well. We had 2 houses. We had a system in blue, the Wendy Allen blue, showing the passage of water from roof down into the various different features. And so we actually, these were more biodiverse roofs rather than green roofs. So they were not just planted, they had dead wood, they had other aggregates up there so that they were more beneficial to insects in terms of creating habitats. But they still acted in the same way, so any kind of overflow from the roofs then went down into the gutters, down into the downpipes, and down into a water butt here. We also had a rainwater planter the other side, and then they travelled along the rills. This is the front, so you can see the kids looking into the sections of all the suds features. And so it was basically done in parts so that this was kind of their patio and their permeable paving. We had used grasscrete on the roads. Then we had a rain garden. Then we had a wetland. And then we had a biodetention area, which is just grass, a swale. And then we had woodland as well. So we were showing how these would benefit people, how they could be quite beautiful features as well as being beneficial to wildlife. Let's just show it. So this is what it looked like in reality. We actually just turned, we had this beautiful, the guys, Fingal guys making the garden had created, had collected a whole load of beautiful material and made one of the walls for the bike shelter. And it was so beautiful we had to turn it the other way because otherwise it would have been a bit lost. But that's really this is the only thing that changed. So this just shows the water butt here and then how it travels down into the next stage, which was the rain garden. So you can again see the insect, the bike shelter in the back, and then all the different levels of aggregate and the fabric and the topsoil. And then you'd also normally put, in a rain garden, you would put pebbles on the top surface as well to stop the soil being kind of just eroded or washed away as the water comes in. The rain garden then overflowed into a wetland, and we had 2 different parts to it. One that was maybe more at the front that was more man-made, and then it went under the ground into and came out these 3 spouts, and then turned into more filter strips that could then basically join, hopefully join more natural watercourses. And then this was the last section here. This was showing a detention basin. So a detention basin can also be a floodplain. It's normally grass. They often double up as playing fields in larger contexts because for large periods of the year they're basically dry. It's only in very serious weather events that they might, where everything else is overflowed, and you end up basically with a detention basin. And again, they're unlined. The pond is the only thing that's lined. They're unlined, and it just basically, the shallow in the grass just holds the water for a while and allows it to dissipate down into the ground after that. And then we had our woodland after that. We had areas of kind of more wet woodland, and then it went into more drier woodland. So we just had fun there showing, I suppose, it was an opportunity just to bring in some of the creatures that might live under the ground as well. So we had fun with worms, not real worms, No worms were harmed in the process. So we made a little den, I suppose, showing how even in really very small spaces you can create the sense of being enclosed in a woodland, and the idea that kids might use it to make dens or to play in. So natural play bringing in that benefit as well to housing estates. And this just shows the grasscrete underneath it and some of the planting above as well that we had in the rain garden. Yeah, that's really good timing because I think that's it actually. So this is basically everything about this is on the Fingal County Council website, and there's a really nice document. I actually haven't put it all here, but it basically goes through all of the stuff I've just said and has some ideas and links for how to look elsewhere to implement some of these measures. I think that's it.